Hi guys, this is Miss Marbury, and we are going to be discussing Chapter 7 today. I'm going to break up Chapter 7 into two different sections, like Part 1 and then Part 2. So this is Chapter 7, Part 1, and Chapter 7 is all about cellular respiration. So what is cellular respiration? It is the release of energy from molecules such as glucose, and you are ultimately creating ATP. So down here, we are going to have our equation that you need to know, the overall equation for cell respiration. We're taking glucose that we're getting from foods that we're eating. Plants get glucose from photosynthesis that they do, and oxygen. And we are going to be creating carbon dioxide and water. So over here, we have our reactants, and then we have our products over here. And a huge product is ATP. We get around 36 to 38 ATP. So a question that we need to ask ourselves is, how does the pizza you had for lunch provide you with the ATP needed to walk up the stairs to class or run a marathon? Well, this occurs through metabolism. So when you eat, the food that you are eating gets broken down. So we have proteins, carbs, fats. They get broken down and ultimately are going to enter into cell respiration at some point to get your ATP. So overall, this is the cell respiration, and then our carbs, proteins, and fats are going to enter in that process through one point or another to ultimately get the ATP that we are going to need. So we said the equation for cell respiration was glucose plus oxygen. Well, how do we get that oxygen? We get that oxygen in from breathing, right? So our oxygen is going to come in through our lungs, and then it's going to enter our bloodstream to go where it needs to go, into our cells. So oxygen and glucose, again, those are reactants. Those are going to go in, are going to get carbon dioxide that we breathe out, and water. I'll discuss where that goes a little bit later, and ATP. So just a real quick view on metabolism. We've talked about metabolism before. There are two different types of metabolism. The first type is catabolism. So this is breaking down. You're going to break down carbs, fats, and proteins into their monomers. So we have glucose. Carbs get broken down to glucose. Fats get broken down to glycerol and fatty acids. And proteins are going to get broken down into amino acids. So those are all going to enter our cell respiration chain at one point in order to give us ATP. We also have anabolism as another type of metabolism. So this is when we build up things, okay? So glucose is going to make glycogen. Remember, glycogen is a storage form that is in humans. It stores energy for us. And then amino acids are going to come and make proteins. So those are just the two types of metabolism. So what actually is metabolism or cellular respiration? Well, this takes place in the cytoplasm and mitochondria of the cell. These are going to be two huge players. Ultimately, most of cell respiration is going to take place in the mitochondria. Cell respiration is aerobic, which means that it requires oxygen. There is going to be a section of the process of cell respiration that's going to be anaerobic, which means no oxygen. And we'll discuss that later. But for the most part, cellular respiration is aerobic. It does require oxygen. We're going to be using tons and tons of enzymes that are assisted by coenzymes. Glucose is going to break down to release energy in the form of ATP, carbon dioxide, and water. So ultimately, the main product, the whole entire purpose of cell respiration is to create ATP. We say that carbon dioxide and water are byproducts. So they're not really important. They do get created, but ultimately ATP is going to be our main product. The whole purpose of this process is to create ATP. So we're going to do a quick overview of all the processes, and then we're going to go deep down into the first process, and that'll be it for part one. So glucose, high energy molecule. Again, we either get it from the food we eat, plants get it from photosynthesis. It's broken down, energy is released to ultimately creating ATP. Again, the main product is ATP. So one glucose molecule results in 36 to 38, depending on how well the process goes. We are going to be using these two molecules, NAD and FAD. They will become important a little bit later on, but they are coenzymes. You do not need to know that NAD plus stands for this. You don't need to know that. You don't need to know that FAD stands for that. Nothing. You just need to know that NAD and FAD are electron carriers. So they're going to pick up enzymes and then they are going to drop them off. So you will see NAD and FAD. You will also see them as NADH and FADH2. So NAD plus is going to pick up electrons and become NADH. FAD is going to pick up electrons and become FADH2. So you will see those, but just know, I say that they're like little vehicles, they're little cars. They just go pick up their electrons and then move it to another part in the process. So the four phases that we're going to be talking about is glycolysis, the prep reaction, the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. This is in part 1 video, and all of these are going to be in part 2 video. So cell respiration takes place in the mitochondria. You know it's the powerhouse of the cell, right? So the powerhouse means it's going to create ATP. So glycolysis, you can see it actually takes place in the cytoplasm when the prep reaction, citric acid cycle, electron transport chain are going to take place in the mitochondria. So you will need to know that. We said overall that there are 36 to 38 ATP that are made. It's not all at once. We have 2 ATP are going to be made in glycolysis, 2 are going to be made in the citric acid cycle, and then 32 to 34 are going to be made in the electron transport chain for a total of 36 to 38. So know that all the ATP is not made just at once. It's mainly made in the electron transport chain, but it's not specifically there. So just a real quick, glycolysis is the breakdown of glucose. If we break down this word, glyco means sugar, lysis means break. So we're breaking apart sugar. So glucose is a 6-carbon molecule. And through glycolysis, you're actually going to break glucose in half, and you are going to get 2 3-carbon molecules. Okay, so glycolysis, you're breaking glucose in half. A 6-carbon molecule becomes 2 3-carbon molecules that are called pyruvate. Okay, so glucose becomes pyruvate in glycolysis. Next, we have the prep reaction. So we're going to get the pyruvate that we made from glycolysis, and we are going to prep it. We are going to get it ready to go into the citric acid cycle. So we'll talk later on but a 3-carbon molecule is going to become a 2-carbon molecule. And then that is going to change into something else later on in the next one. The citric acid cycle, it is a cycle, so it's going to repeat itself. Whatever it starts with, that's what it finishes with. And the main thing that we're going to get out of this are going to be our electron carriers. So NADH and FADH2 are our main products that we're going to get from the citric acid cycle. Again, I'll talk about how we get those products in the next video. And then finally, the electron transport chain. This is our heavy hitter, okay? This is our main worker. This is the process where we are going to be getting a majority of our ATP. So we're going to get electrons from electron carriers, NADH and FADH2, that are going to go to this chain, and we are going to finally end with our product of ATP molecules. Okay, so how the electron transport chain works, we have our electrons that have high potential, right? Because based on position, when they go down, they are going to have kinetic energy. And through this, they release energy in order for ATP to be created, okay? And again, I'll discuss this more when we talk about the electron transport chain in the second video, but it does have to do with electrons are going to be releasing energy so that ATP can be created. Pyruvate is a pivotal metabolite in cellular respiration. So if no oxygen is available, that would mean that we have anaerobic conditions like I talked about a little bit earlier. We're going to get another product called lactate or alcohol through a process called fermentation. I will discuss that as well, but just know that fermentation, we only get 2 ATP versus the whole process of cellular respiration where we get around 38 ATP. So it is not effective, but sometimes this is all that cells have to deal with. So they're going to make ATP regardless. And there are some consequences of that that we will discuss. So if pyruvate is not made, okay, if oxygen is not available, pyruvate becomes something else and does not go on to the citric acid cycle.